Today on Sports Card Investor, the dramatic price swings of TOPPS Project 2020, plus a look at the 5 hottest cards in the sports card hobby. My name is Jeff Wilson. By day, I invest in tech companies, and at night, I invest in sports cards. Join me on my journey to profit from the hobby we all love. Hello, sports card investors, and welcome to another episode. I hope you're doing well out there. I know the last several days have been really tough for this country. We're obviously going through a lot. There's a lot going on here in my hometown of Atlanta, and I know there's a lot going on in many of the places that you live around the country. I'm not going to cover that here on my show because I recognize that sports cards are an escape. The hobby is an escape. This is something that all of us can rally around that brings us personal joy and serves as an opportunity to kind of forget about what's going on in the world around us. So I have a lot of emotions about what happened. I'm going to share my own personal viewpoints on my personal channels, but let's keep this about the hobby. Let's keep this about sports cards, and let's keep this as an escape where we can all talk about something we love. So let's get into that. And today we got some great topics to talk about. I'm going to update you on TOPPS Project 2020 and everything going on in that world because it has been volatile. There's been a lot of price movement, which I'm going to share with you guys today. And I'm going to be talking about some cards that are going up. It's good. There's lots of great things happening to celebrate in the hobby. And we're going to be talking about that today. Among the things I am personally celebrating is the fact that this Wednesday, in fact, tomorrow is my member live stream. Tomorrow night is my member live stream. And I just got some interesting cards in for it. I got a 2019 Panini Black Football. This tiny little box, has 5 cards in it, but some really high-end cards, autos, RPAs, that type of stuff. So I'm excited about busting that open, as well as some boxes of Contenders basketball and a jumbo hobby of Bowman baseball. I'm going to be opening all of those tomorrow night, giving the cards away to my members, while also talking with them about sports cards from an investing standpoint and answering their questions. Would love to have you as part of it. If you can join in the fun before 8 p.m. on Wednesday, you can join the live stream. You'll be invited to it. You'll get the private link and be able to join in on the breaks and the conversation. Go to my website, sportscardinvestor.com, and click on the membership link in the main menu bar. All right, guys. So as you know, last Thursday, I did quite the controversial episode. I told you my opinions about TOPPS Project 2020. I have never seen as much spirited feedback around an episode that I have done, and I appreciate it. Look, a lot of people are very passionate about TOPPS Project 2020 and the how art and sports cards are crossing over and how it's bringing a whole new set of people into the hobby. It's attracting art collectors. It's attracting different types of people from different walks of life into the hobby. And that is wonderful. And that should absolutely be celebrated. I think that is an absolutely fantastic thing. I said that I thought that a lot of the cards in the set were overpriced and that there had been a lot of flipping activity going on and cards had reached unsustainable price points. A lot of you disagreed with me on that. And this past week, there has been a lot of price movement. And unfortunately, for folks who own Project 2020 cards, the price movement this last week has gone down a lot. Most of the cards have dropped pretty significantly in value. And let me say this right off the bat. I don't want that. I do not want that. Yes, I spoke out last week about how I felt TOPPS Project 2020 cards were overvalued. I don't want the wild swings in card prices to happen the way that they have been happening because it is bad for the hobby. What it means is that there are people out there who are getting burned. There are people out there who are losing some serious money that they've invested into these products, and that's not good for anybody. That's not good for the growth of our hobby. I want everyone to win. That's because honestly, that's how I win. If everybody is winning, if everybody is making money off sports cards and cards are going up and the hobby is going up, it's good for me, it's good for my viewership, it's good for you, it's how all of us win in this thing. I want everyone to win. So what I don't want is to see these types of numbers that I'm looking at on my screen right now. So this is the last 7 days of Topps Project 2020 cards, and I have all of these cards now in Market Movers. And what I want you to look at is the percentage change, this number right here. So green means the card has gone up in the last 7 days, which 2 cards have. And red means the Topps 2020 card has gone down in the last 7 days. Oh boy. Look at this, guys. These are all negative 49, negative 50%. These are cards that have literally dropped in half. We're now in cards that have gone down by more than half in the last 7 days. And this is just page 1. Let me go to page 2, guys. It gets uglier. Look at this. Look at that red on your screen. That is, I mean, these cards are down 70%, 70%, almost 80% in the last 7 days. It has been an absolute bloodbath for Topps Project 2020 in the last week. This is not what anybody should want. This is not what anybody should want. And it's, I mean, you know, this is that Mike Trout Ermsey card that I talked about, Art by Ermsey card that I talked about, that I said very strongly in my episode last week that I thought was overpriced because it had reached the price of his actual rookie card, his actual 2011 Topps Update rookie card in PSA 10. And you can see what happened to this card. I mean, this card went, you know, this card was hovering around $500. It went all the way up to $2,300, over $2,300. And then it has sharply fallen off in the last 7 days. And now it's back down to around $1,000 again. Now, here's the good news. The good news is that hopefully, if you own these cards, hopefully you bought these cards anywhere along this very long line where these cards, you know, had started out at $32, $33 and had gone all the way up to $500 before this crazy rise had happened over the course of a week. So as long as you bought the card in here, you're still doing really, really well overall. Now, I'm concerned about how quickly this is falling, but I do think it will stabilize. Look, a lot of people in the comments last week made the point, and it is true, that Topps Project 2020 is bringing a lot of new people into the hobby and that there's a new type of people buying these cards. I do think that that is true. So if that is true, then that means that these prices are going to stabilize again because there is going to be demand, and there's only 2,911 of these cards ever produced. So while we clearly hit a peak that was unsustainable, the cards have come back down. Hopefully they'll plateau soon. So hopefully those of you who had bought these cards early on still see a great return from these cards. And hopefully some of those new people coming in the hobby start buying them now so that things stabilize. And then maybe the cards can then go back up at a more reasonable pace over the course of time. And by the way, this is not just the cards that I talked about in my show last week. This is almost every single card in the Topps 2020, Project 2020 set. I mean, this is the Ken Griffey Jr. card, which I did not talk about in my show last week. This is Ken Griffey Jr.'s King Saladin card, numbered to 2504. And you can see the same pattern. It had this amazing spike that occurred where this card had gotten all the way up to almost $1,400, and now it's down below $600. Again, that looks like a dramatic up and a dramatic fall, which it is. But for most of the people who bought this card over the course of the last 90 days, they got it for under $300. Or some of the people who bought it early got it for well under $100. So there's still a lot of people out there who have done well on this set. There's only, you know, if you bought the card one of these days right here, yeah, you got a little bit hurt. You were buying at the absolute peak and you got a little bit hurt, and we had a market correction. But most people did pretty well on these cards. And I truly do hope that we see these cards stabilize, and that we see these cards then start to go up slowly over time, just in a more stable fashion than the ridiculous flipping that we saw happening a couple of weeks ago that led all of the cards in Topps Project 2020 to get to these absolutely unsustainable prices. Okay, so that's Topps 2020, Topps Project 2020. Let me show you one other card that also has had a similar pattern. Look, here's what's happening, guys. There's no sports right now. So patterns that you're seeing in the market are honestly being created artificially by something that's not necessarily sustainable, right? And so we obviously saw the run up in card prices due to the Last Dance documentary. And this is Scottie Pippen's rookie card. This is his 1988 FLIR in PSA 9. And I'm using PSA 9 because there's a lot more of these on the market than PSA 10. So you get a truer graph if you look at PSA 9. And you can see the slide of this card. You know, this card, if you got in early, if you got in an early March on this card, you were getting this card for around $50. And then this card went all the way up to a peak of $630. This amazing 10x increase over the course of 30 days. But since that peak, there has been a pretty dramatic slide back. And right now, this card is down around $250. So we went, so again, people still made money on this if they had gotten in on this early. But if you were buying this card as it was going up to the peak, it's kind of come down the other side, unfortunately. And until we get sports back on TV and until there's actually events that are occurring that could be more long-term sustainable things happening, like players breaking through, which is going to mean good things for their card prices for years to come, we're going to see some of these swings occur. So just be careful. Be careful out there. Realize that the market right now is more volatile than ever before. But this show is about our top 5 cards, and I'm sorry to lead off with some depressing news about some of these cards, so let's talk about some cards that are going up. And I do have some good news. Even though this Scottie Pippen card has come down, there are other basketball cards from that era that have maintained their value. In fact, I went and I looked at the 1986 FLIR set, that iconic set. These are all of the PSA 10s from 1986 FLIR. And this is the last 30 days. So this is since the Last Dance wrapped up and ended. What have these cards done since the Last Dance ended? And I'm pleased to say that most of them are still going up. Most of them are still doing okay. So they have not all followed the trajectory of that Scottie Pippen card. So you can see this is Charles Barkley. His card's up the most. Isaiah Thomas, Akeem Olajuwon, Joe Dumars, Karl Malone. They're all still going up, even since the conclusion of the documentary. We do have some going down, including, by the way, Michael Jordan. We actually saw a sale of that one go down a little bit. Although for the most part, the Michael Jordan cards have actually held up pretty well. And we've seen some upwards price movement on the PSA 9s and the PSA 8s. So for the most part, the Jordan cards have held up pretty well. But let's look specifically at the Charles Barkley. And let's make him the number 1 card on our top 5 cards for this week. So this is Charles Barkley's 1986 FLIR basketball PSA 10. This is the graph of this card from the last 30 days, and or from the last 90 days rather. And as you can see, this card's had a great run. This card 90 days ago, if you go back 90 days ago, this card was, you could have gotten for as little as $2,000, $2,400, $2,400. And it went up and up and up and up and up as the documentary was going on and people were being nostalgic about that era of basketball. And this card is still sitting today up around $4,300. So we have not seen a slide back on this card. We've seen a very nice upwards trend line on this card overall over the last 90 days. And I think that that's because Charles Barkley is still very, very relevant. He's a media figure. We see him often on TV. Obviously, he's involved heavily in, basketball broadcasting. So unlike some of these other players from 86 FLIR who now may start to kind of fade away into the background a little bit because you don't see them as often. There's not that moment that's going to bring them back into the spotlight. Charles Barkley is someone we see all the time. Generally a likable guy. You may have a different opinion on that. I find him generally likable. And so I think as a result of that, his card prices are holding strong and will hopefully continue to hold strong. Let's talk some more basketball, but let's bring it a little bit more into today's era. And let's talk about a player who has kind of been forgotten this season. Somewhat of a controversial player, a player who has had some great success, but is not always super well liked. A player who most recently went to the Nets to pair up with KD. And I'm talking about Kyrie Irving. And Kyrie Irving, his cards have been on a nice upwards trajectory over the last 90 days. This is his 2012 Prism PSA 10, his base card in PSA 10. from Prism, and this card has been on quite the run over the last 90 days. If we go back 90 days ago, you could have bought this card for under $150. And now, if we look at where this card is going up and up. And most recently, this card's been selling at $345. A very nice trend line, has more than doubled over the course of the last 90 days. We have also, by the way, seen a lot of upwards movement in Kevin Durant's cards as well over the course of this year. And so I think what people are remembering is that the Nets are, this year they didn't have a great team. But of course, this was just kind of a waiting year. And the waiting is to see what happens really next year. There's been a little bit of rumor that maybe KD could come back for the playoffs. I'm not necessarily sure that's going to happen. But I think people are starting to think about next year and starting to think about the fact that the Nets actually should be a contender when Kyrie Irving and KD are actually on the same court together and have that opportunity to play together, that the Nets should actually be able to make some noise next year. So I think people are starting to anticipate that. They're starting to buy these cards up again and hope that that's going to be a bright future for Brooklyn. All right, let's switch gears. Let's go to another sport. Let's go to baseball. And let's talk about the prospect that some have forgotten about. Let's talk about the hottest prospect in baseball up until, the release of 2020 Bowman. Because now that 2020 Bowman is out, people are talking about Jason Dominguez and they're talking about the various, new first prospects in 2020 Bowman. And they kind of have forgotten about the guys of last year. Of course, Wander Franco being one of the absolute hottest prospects. So people aren't talking about him as much. But that doesn't mean that his card prices aren't still kind of sneaking up here. They are still sneaking up. And in fact, if we look at the last 90 days, Wander Franco, his card from last year's Bowman, it's on a nice upwards run. I think that people, although they aren't talking about him as much because they have new prospects to talk about now, I think people are excited to see how his game could potentially advance this year. Now, it's going to be interesting. We don't know what's going to happen with baseball. There may very well be no minor league season. And if there's no minor league season, you have to wonder, how's that going to affect Wander Franco? And how's that going to affect the prospects in this set, like Jason Dominguez? I mean, it could be crazy that we could literally be talking about a star in the making like Jason Dominguez with everyone chasing his cards. He may not have a single at-bat in the major or minor league system until next year at this point. I mean, it's crazy to think about, but Wander Franco's cards, people have been anticipating him and what he can do. And so you see, this is his base 2019 Bowman Chrome card. These cards were down under $50 or right around $50 at the beginning of March, between $50 and $60 at the beginning of March. And they've been on just a nice, slow upwards climb. And most recently, these cards have been right in the neighborhood of about $80. And so, not a huge gain, but to go from $50 to $80 on a nice stable climb over the course of 3 months, that is definitely showing some interest in Wander Franco and some interest in getting this year's baseball season going. And hopefully he's going to get a chance to play. We'll see how that plays out. Speaking of young stars, let's turn our attention to football for the number 4 guy on my list today. It's a guy who has been very, very hot this offseason. A lot of people excited about him next year coming out as a bona fide starter and seeing what the Denver Broncos can do under the leadership of Drew Locke. Now, we've talked about Drew Locke a little bit on this show before because his cards have been hot. Let's take a look at his 2019 Prism Auto card because that card has really been pushing upwards. Now, not a ton of sales of this card, but all of Drew Locke's cards have been pushing upwards, and this card in particular shows that upwards gain and that upwards climb. So this was a card that you could have bought back in the middle of March for as little as $300 right there. And it's been on this climb. Again, not a ton of sales of this card, but overall the trajectory has been going up and up. The most recent sale was all the way up at $800. And before the most recent sale, this card was still going in the neighborhood of $600 to $700 in here. So, overall, if you had bought this card 3 months ago at $300 and you've ridden the Drew Locke popularity wave up, you're doing pretty well. This is, of course, his auto and PSA 10 from 2019 Prism. And, a lot of people are excited to see what Drew Locke can do this year with the Broncos. Certainly going to be fun to watch. Another quarterback in a little bit of a different situation, but another quarterback who has seen his prices rally a bit. this might surprise you a little bit. The person who took a lot of blame for the 49ers outcome in the Super Bowl, Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo, he has been an interesting trend over the course of the last several months. So I'm going back here. We're looking at Jimmy Garoppolo's 2014 TOPPS Chrome PSA 10, and I've expanded the graph here to go all the way back to November. So we can see from about the middle of the NFL season all the way through to where we are today. And by the way, Market Movers now has about 6 months of data or greater, 7 months in this case, for a lot of players. And so, it gives us the luxury to see a graph like this starting to really develop over the course of time. So you can see the incredible run that Jimmy Garoppolo's, that this card went on leading up to the Super Bowl. So this card was around $25, as little as $18 during the midpoint of the season last year. And then as we went and we got right up to the Super Bowl, the card went all the way up to $87. So this was a card that you could have gotten in for under 20, and you could have gotten out of right before the Super Bowl for almost 90. So you could have gotten a 4x increase over the course of a couple of months of the NFL season. Then the Super Bowl didn't go so well for Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers. He didn't look particularly great. The 49ers obviously, were overtaken by the Chiefs, and so a lot of people lost interest in Jimmy Garoppolo's cards. In fact, they went all the way back down to $27.50. So they went all the way in the weeks after the Super Bowl. His cards literally crashed from a high of 87 to a low of 27, this same exact card. But then maybe people felt like, well, maybe we're overreacting a little bit. And ever since the Super Bowl, there has been this nice steady climb back up. It's a little bit jagged. I shouldn't say steady climb. It's a jagged climb. But the overall trend line is consistent. And these cards have now gotten back up to about $75 again. So what a crazy run it has been for Jimmy Garoppolo. From all the way down at $20 to all the way up at 80 plus bucks to all the way back down, close to where they started. And now we're almost all the way back up to where they were when he made it into the Super Bowl to begin with. So you out there, you football card collectors and investors out there, you guys need to make up your mind about Jimmy Garoppolo. Do you like him? Do you not like him? What do you think he's going to do next year? Because, man, you cannot, if we're looking at the market does not know what to make of this guy. It's been kind of fun to watch. And honestly, all of it has been a bit of an overreaction. It was a bit of overreaction to have him as high as he was probably right before the Super Bowl. It was then certainly an overreaction to take him down as low as he went right after the Super Bowl. And now maybe to get him going quite as high as he has, maybe we're overreacting a little bit again. I don't know. But it's going to be fun to see what Jimmy Garoppolo is able to do this season with the 49ers and what that looks like for him. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed our top 5 cards from today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope to see you on my member break tomorrow night. I would love to open up some of these boxes, the Bowman and the Panini Black and the Contenders basketball, and hope to be able to give some cards out to you. Please join if you can. Go to sportscardinvestor.com and click on the membership link. And as long as you do it by 8 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, you will receive that private link to join our live stream. Thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate you watching the show. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you back in a couple of days for what should be, by the way, a really cool episode. Wait for that. All right, see you guys soon. Take care.